I think it's crazy enough to just be true.
Welcome to Experience Points, presented by our friends at Avtex, who transform customer experience through CX design and orchestration. On Experience Points, contestants earn points by answering customer experience questions and share their insight on how to make your interactions remarkable. Those points turn into dollars for the charity of their choosing. I'm Dan Gingiss.
And I'm Joey Coleman, and we'd love to introduce you to today's contestant.
He's spent 30 years as a stand-up comic with over 6,500 shows. He's an expert on the science of humor. He had a long-running must-see show at the Riviera Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, 40 is Not the New 20. And he coaches some of the top CEOs and entrepreneurs in the world on how to use comedy in the workplace, including Shark Tank's Kevin Harrington. Welcome to Experience Points, Matt Kazam.
Hello. Thank you so much for that introduction and for having me on this, what I think is so creative, one of these just genius things that came out of the last year. So I'm so excited to be here. And I'm playing for a great charity that's really close to my heart called Homes Not Borders, through a friend of ours, Melanie Coburn, and just, so excited to be here. Thanks to Avtex and you guys for having me. It's gonna be fun for sure.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we're excited to have you, Matt. You've got a great cause, Home Without Borders, that provides the opportunity for folks that are refugees who are coming to the United States that may not have a place to live. It provides housing and furniture and toys for kids. And so make sure they get established well right on when they hit the ground here in the United States. So super excited that you're going to be playing for such an important cause. Let's get into the first game. Today, to be playing Fake or Fact.
In Fake or Fact, examine 3 similar experiences. Some are real, some are not. Your task is to determine the fake from the fact. Each experience correctly detected is worth 100 points. 3 correct answers will earn you 200 bonus points for a possible score of 500 points.
You ready to get going and win some money?
Let's do it.
All right, Matt. Well, the longer a company has been in business, the more they feel compelled to add new services or new products to their offerings. While often these offerings are a logical extension of their brand, sometimes they seem a bit crazy. We're going to present 3 new product offerings from existing businesses for your consideration. I'll share all 3, and then you get to decide whether each one is fake or fact. The first one is Romance While You Eat, a fast food company that published a romance novel for Mother's Day. The second one, Fast Cooking Dinner, linguine and fusilli pasta made by an Italian sports car company. And last but not least, a candy company that made a flavored soda that was like drinking liquid candy. Now, these are 3 potential new product offerings for existing brands. It's time for you to decide whether each one is fake or fact. Let's go to that first one, a fast food company that published a romance novel for Mother's Day. Matt, do you think that's fake or fact, and why?
Of the 3, that was the first one that jumped out at me. But then he mentioned they could all be real. So that one jumped out at me that it was the most absurd of the 3, and I don't know how they would monetize it, but I think of all the bad dates that have happened at fast food restaurants, maybe there is a tie-in, maybe it's about that, it's about finding love in the craziest of places, but I think it's crazy enough to just be true.
All right.
You think it's true.
You think it's crazy enough to be true? You think it's fact?
I think it's fact.
And you are correct. Actually, Kentucky Fried Chicken released a novel called Tender Wings of Desire back for Mother's Day a few years ago. It was a huge success, at least for the people that are into fast food-based fan fiction around romance, for some reason it worked.
Is that Colonel Sanders there?
That's a younger, healthier version of Colonel Sanders.
It's a photoshopped Colonel, and we never really see him out of the suit, so we don't know. But if I would have known that, because they do use humor a lot, so I don't know if the book is tongue-in-cheek, a romance novel, but those herbs and spices are very intoxicating. We all know that. We've all made bad decisions after a bucket of chicken. And the Colonel himself, as I say, very sexy. So I think they think outside of the box, and that's very Kentucky Fried Chicken. I'm glad it's not like Taco Bell or Arby's. I don't think Arby's would be very romantic.
All right. Well, you got that one right, Matt. You're 1 for 1. Let's go to number 2. How about linguine and fusilli pasta made by an Italian sports car company? Do you think that's fake or fact, and why do you think that?
The Italians, they love pasta. And, but the only thing is, I don't think they eat the pasta that we eat. I don't think their pasta comes from a box. I don't think that, but maybe this is for kids. That was my first thing. What a thing. They like cars. Maybe they're going to be little Ferraris and that sort of thing. But is that on brand for them? So quick, I'm just going to say, I got the first one right. Let's say this one is fake, because Ferrari pasta, it would have to be like $1,200 a box. It would have to be the best pasta you've ever ate in your life, and I don't know if that makes sense. So I'm going to say fake.
All right, so you're going with fake based on the fact that nobody would pay $1,200 for a box of spaghetti. And Matt, you are correct. It is indeed fake. To our knowledge, no Italian sports car company is offering branded pasta. Let's see if you can go 3 for 3, Matt. The last one, a candy company that made a flavored soda that was like drinking liquid candy. What do you think, fake or fact, and why?
This one I thought right away, because if they could make an IV drip with their candy in it that you were hooked up to all the time, they would do that. That was my first thing, is that this is not a liquid form where they could put more in. This is got to be 100% true, and I couldn't buy it, but I think that this one is 100% fact.
All right, you think this one is fact? And indeed it is fact. For several years, Lifesaver soda was a real thing. You can't get it anymore. Well, maybe on eBay, if somebody's got a bottle lying around, but it is indeed a true story fact. Fantastic job, Matt. You got us off to a great start in the conversation here. Loved those answers.
I have a story, Matt, from my first job out of college, which was at a collectibles company that did plates, dolls, Betty Boop figurines, and a lot of sports collectibles. And one of their most popular products were gold-plated baseball cards. And they would take real baseball cards, and they would have an artist render them and create a mold. And they'd make a card that was then stamped in gold foil. Now, I'm not sure why so many people bought these, but they loved them. They bought them and they put them in binders. We would sell the binders just like a regular baseball card. Well, we had done licenses with Major League Baseball, the NFL, NBA, NASCAR, all of them. And I suggested that we partner with, at the time, the WWF, now the WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment. And my bosses were initially very skeptical, because they said, but there's no such thing as trading cards in wrestling, so why would we do that? And I said, because wrestling fans are so loyal that they'll basically buy anything. And we ended up creating our own trading cards. So I had to have these fantastic business discussions about, Andre the Giant's historical record and the number of times he won the championship, so we could put it back on the back of the card. And this turned out, no joke, to be the second best selling line of cards behind baseball. It beat out all of those other sports that actually did have trading cards, because people just loved these characters and they loved the brand. And so I think what we've learned from these examples, some of them pretty goofy, is that when you have fans, there's an opportunity to expand into a different place and bring them along with you. And I would imagine that even works in your line of work, because you've got people that have seen you at one show and they're going to follow you maybe to another show, even though they're not going to see the same jokes all the time, but they like what you do, or maybe you're going to do a podcast or a movie or what have you, and they're going to follow you through. Have you seen that in other examples or that you've experienced where maybe there's a brand that takes it in an unexpected direction?
Well, I mean, I think in my business itself, it is not just where it's for the entertainment, but they may have seen me as an entertainer and then hired me as a speaker or a trainer, where again, it's another product offering like the soda or the pasta or the romance novel, but it's still on brand for me. So I see it in my business all the time. But even with other comedians, sometimes they break through. Like Amy Schumer started off as a comedian, and now she's a pitch woman for moms with kids, and it's literally it's mayonnaise and a bunch of other products I've seen her out there pitching. So it wasn't what she went into, but she took her fan base and then was able to sell them products and became a great pitch person. And you do see that in other areas of comedy for sure.
Yeah, Matt, I totally agree with you. The more you can build a fan base, the better. I know you operate out of your home base in Las Vegas, and let's be candid, there are a lot of folks that are very passionate, not only about Las Vegas, but about some of the brands in Las Vegas. Could you speak to how loyalty can really foster driving and building connection with your business or with your customers that almost kind of feeds on itself a little bit, right? The more loyal they are, the more you can offer them, the more they come back and spend money with you, and how that cycle just kind of perpetuates itself.
Yeah, no, that is the core engine that runs this town from the gambling and tourism side. The convention side is a whole other business, and that's a big part of the Vegas business. Not now, but it is a big part of the business. But the rest of it is loyalty marketing, and the more they spend, they get a better room next time. But part of what the customer experience is, because it's all email database marketing, and I worked very closely when I was at the Riv, because that was part of our marketing. Hey, come to the Riv, and especially at the end, it was like, come to the Riv, celebrate the end of the Riv. NC40 is not the new 20. It becomes important in that way because it's not just about, hey, here's a free room. It's got to be around something. It's February. It's got to be Valentine's Day programs and that sort of thing. And it's June, so but everything is a giveaway. Every Thursday they're giving away Golden Knights gear, and again the decisions that went into that, because it's got to get them to the property. And I used to joke about it because I worked for Station Casinos when I first came to Vegas, and these were people at the time were controlling 75% of local gaming. So it was all loyalty marketing. They couldn't do a promotion, and that's why my comedy show was so great, because I always said you couldn't do a promotion. Hey, come down and lose your rent money. It's not, you gotta. But if you tell them, hey, come down and watch a comedy show, and the math says you're probably going to lose your rent money, then what a guise to be able to do it. And it became a thing where only the top players, because we only had 250 tickets to the show, and it was sold out every night because it was something special for them, and they saw comedy as a reward, as for their loyalty. And at the end of the day, I felt bad because I know some people lost their rent money, but I understand the business I was in too, and that's what kept the roof over our head and the lights on, and so yeah, Vegas is all about that for sure.
Dan, let's recap how Matt did playing fake or fact.
Well, Joey, as you know, in this game, correct answers are worth 100 points, and Matt answered 3 questions correctly, which means he earned 300 points. Or did he? Because he got all 3 correct, he also got the 200 bonus points for a total of 500 points, which translates into a $500 donation for Homes Not Borders. Congratulations, Matt.
Thank you. This is awesome.
Well, that concludes this episode of Experience Points. Check out more games with Matt and our other celebrity contestants at experiencepointsgame.com. That's experiencepointsgame.com. We'll see you soon for more examples of remarkable customer experiences here at Experience Points, presented by Avtex.
Yeah, what I thought was interesting about this is as an industry, we've created this concept of loyalty marketing. But I would kind of challenge our listeners to think about, is it loyalty marketing or is it really transaction marketing? In other words, just because I'm spending a lot of money with you, does that really indicate loyalty? Loyalty is an emotion, right? And so we have different loyalty programs that your Sky Miles, if I fly on Delta or American Airlines, they all have them, and it's really a rewards program versus loyalty. And I think we need to make sure that we don't confuse the difference between rewarding behavior with kind of the emotional connection that loyalty really is, and make sure we understand, how do we reward both?
Yeah, I think that ties in really well with the previous example they talked about with wrestling, right? What if it sounds hokey, but what if we transitioned our thinking about how we think about customers and we just called them fans, no matter what business we were in? And we're talking about how we serve our fan base, right? Because that has a different connotation in terms of their perception of you as a brand, because it carries that connotation that there's some affinity there beyond the transaction, as you say.